So what matters most then is not whether we are sitting at Jesus' feet or serving Jesus dinner. What matters is why we are doing what we are doing and the attitude that we have while doing it. Are we doing it free from distractions and anxiety and resentment, or are we doing it out of love? This is the story of two sisters, Mary and Martha, and their encounter with Jesus. Luke 10:38 through 42. Hear the word of the Lord. Now as Jesus and the disciples went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at Jesus' feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but few things are needed. Indeed, only one. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We just heard a story. This tale of two women is controversial and often misunderstood, even though it's probably familiar to most of us. It also has a way of making good people angry, and perhaps you already heard why. Hard-working servants tend to see themselves in this story. Folks who fill in when others fall short, folks who take up the slack when others have left it behind, those who make up for that slack with great effort in order to get things done. Good people who, when the moment calls for it, see a need and meet that need, just like Martha's trying to do in this story. Thus, it's understandable when she makes what is a legitimate complaint, at least it seems at first, that Mary has left her all alone to do all the work herself. She's singing that old song, "All by myself." And this seems very troublesome to some, perhaps to you, especially to those of you who are known and pride yourselves on being hard workers. How much more irritating it is to hear the end of the story, to hear Jesus stand up for the slacker. Indeed, to defend Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus and actually rebuke Martha, who's doing her best to serve. However, this story in no way undermines faithful service. That's not the point, and we need to stay away from that. I want to show that this is the case by approaching it in a fresh way, to show that this is not a story, as I've heard it preached before, about priorities. About you have important things and then you have secondary things, and just keep the important things the main thing and the secondary things the main thing. I don't think that's really what's happening here. It's also not, as some have taught, about the active life versus the contemplative life. You hear some mystics saying this, that the life of prayer and silence is preferable to the life of activism and service. I don't think that's what's going on here. It's not saying that it's better to sit doing nothing than to get up and do something. Both of those things matter. What matters here is the context in which the story takes place. And when we put it in its proper context, we get the message, which is that it's a story about hospitality, about the hospitality of presence in particular, about really being in the moment, about being here now, about being with the person that you're trying to serve, about giving them what they want, what they need, instead of being distracted by concerns that pull you away from the present moment, away from the true need of those around us, which is sometimes simply to be with them. the hospitality of presence. In spite of getting a bad rap in this story, Martha is the one who initially shows hospitality. She sees Jesus and his disciples traveling, and she welcomes them into her home in verse 38. We're told she welcomed him. There would be no story if Martha had not gone out of her way to invite Jesus in. We know that she's going to get distracted and ultimately rebuked by Jesus, but let's not forget that she initially has the right attitude. She wants to be hospitable. She wants to give Jesus and his disciples what they need as they're traveling along the road. And it's in the midst of this that her sister Mary, we're told, sat at the feet of Jesus and listened to what he was saying. That is as good a description as any of the hospitality of presence. Mary is being fully present with Jesus. She is listening to what he wants. She's doing what he wants her to do. He is engaged fully and completely with simply being together. But there's something else happening here, something crucial, something that's easy to miss in our culture that in sermons I've heard, they tend to overlook this. We have to go back to Jesus' culture to understand how revolutionary and liberating the significance of sitting at Jesus' feet is. Because this isn't just saying that Martha is sitting on the floor with Jesus. This is the posture of a student to a rabbi, of a disciple to a teacher. Mary is in the position that one would take if one was training under a rabbi to eventually become a rabbi. Jesus completely accepts Mary's behavior here, even though it is forbidden in Jesus' society. What do I mean by that? Well, there's no other way to say it. Women were second-class citizens in the ancient world. Men were the landowners. They were the only ones who were counted in the census. Women were not counted in the census, so they literally didn't count. Men were accepted as students to rabbis, and women were not. That's just how it was, and yet, in this liberating moment, Jesus sets all that aside. He breaks down the societal standards, particularly the traditional, cultural, sexual, and gender roles of the day. Not only is he in a house with two women who are not his relatives, which is upsetting enough for his culture, he's already outside the lines of acceptable society, but he is actually training a woman to be a rabbi, to be a religious leader, to be a teacher, and that just wasn't allowed. So we have this beautiful moment, not just of Mary and Jesus being together, but of Jesus accepting her as a student, as being someone who could do what men were supposed to do. So we have this beautiful, liberating moment, but Martha doesn't see it that way. This isn't a good thing to her. She wants to reinforce the traditional cultural roles that women assumed in the ancient world. And it's, perhaps in the moment not hard to see why. She is so overwhelmed by all the tasks before her. You can imagine the pots are bubbling over, there's kettles whistling, there's all sorts of chaos going on in the kitchen, and she simply wants some help. We're told in verse 40 that she is distracted. The Greek word is periespato. That's the key word here. She is periespato, which means pulled away, pulled apart, disintegrated, fragmented. It's to be displaced, stretched, torn in many directions. And that's exactly what's happening to Martha. There's so much to do. There's so much happening around her. She's needed in all of these different places. She's dragged in every direction by worries and anxieties, by things that need to be done right now, and she feels that she's in it all alone. She feels abandoned. She feels like she's working all by herself, and guess who in her mind is to blame for this situation? It's not her. It's Mary's fault. And beyond Mary's fault, it's also Jesus' fault. It's Jesus' fault for not doing anything about all these things that she's worried and distracted and troubled about. We all know people like this. We've been people like this, perhaps. People who want to project our worries and anxieties on other people. We don't want to be the only person in the room who's troubled. We want other people to share those same troubles with us. In psychological terms, do you guys hear that? Do you guys hear that music, or is that just the voices in my head? Okay, I'm sorry, never mind, that's just me. In psychological terms, Mary does something here called triangling. That's a fancy psychological term, but here's what it means. Martha ought to just talk to Mary. What she ought to do is just pull Mary aside alone and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I'm all alone. What's going on? Why aren't you helping me? But she doesn't do that. Instead, she brings Jesus into it. She puts him in a place where Jesus has to take a side. He can't be neutral here. This is a way of projecting her anxiety on others, of making them the reason for her anxiety, and demanding that they solve the problem rather than she deal with it privately. It's called triangulating. Martha triangulates Jesus into this dispute she's having with Mary, forcing him to take sides. And this is what happens when she does that. Jesus offers a warm, kind, loving rebuke, beginning with that tender phrase, Martha, Martha. I always think of Marsha from that television show. What was that show? The Brady Bunch. Yeah, Marsha, except here it's Martha, Martha, which is meant to be heard as a term of endearment. It's kind of like, oh, dear Martha, or oh, God bless you, Martha. If only you knew. Martha, here's your real problem. You're distracted. You're pulled in 1,000 different directions. But right now, in this context, at this moment, none of that is necessary. The one thing that is necessary is the hospitality of presence, simply being with me. You've misjudged Martha because she's doing the right thing. She's the one who's doing that. She is attending to my needs. She's listening to me. She's being with me. She's doing what I want you all to do when I come into your house. Martha, why invite me here so that I simply sit here and watch you busy with chores? So that you can ignore me? So that you can be anxious about serving and you have no time or energy or attention to spend with me? The question at the heart of this story is, who is showing real hospitality? And of course, Mary is the one showing hospitality. She's the model here, not Martha. Mary is focused on Jesus, fully present, fully engaged in this moment, while Martha is everywhere but here. She's fragmented, inattentive to the greatest need of the moment. She's unaware that in this moment, the dishes can wait. Martha started out right. She invited him into her home to engage with him, to learn of him, to know him, to love him, to listen to him. But now she's actually doing none of these things because of her fragmented attitude. And worst of all, here's the real kicker, maybe why Jesus rebukes her. She's trying to draw Mary away. She's trying to pull Mary from her gift of presence that she's giving to Jesus. She's trying to pull her into her anxiety and worry. She's trying to reinforce her culture's traditional women's roles. And Jesus says, He just refuses to go along with it all. That's how our story ends. It leaves us open-ended. It doesn't tell us how Martha responds to it. It's a storytelling method that Luke uses in order to get us to put ourselves into the story, to ask, who are we? How will we respond? Will we, if we're in Martha's position, will we go back to the kitchen and continue worrying and being anxious? Or will we take our seat next to Mary at the feet of Jesus? I want to establish something, especially for those who view yourselves and take pride in the fact that you work hard and that you serve others well. I think that's probably most of us here. If you're in church on Sunday mornings, chances are you're a servant. You're a hard worker. You're disciplined. And therefore, most of us identify more with Martha than Mary here. And may I suggest that that's the best way to approach this story. It's fitting because this story is not really about Mary. This story is about Martha and her distractedness and Jesus' rebuke of her, and how will she respond after that rebuke. So as Marthas in this room, it's important to realize what this story is not about. Again, the story is not about contrasting the active life with the contemplative life. It's not saying, as some mystics have tried to say, that it's better to just, sit and go to church and pray and be quiet all the time and leave the active life to others. There's a time and place for everything. Ecclesiastes says that. There's a time to be active and roll up our sleeves, to do something for others, especially the loved ones in our lives. And there's also a time for hearing. And in this story, it's that time. It's the time to listen and learn and love. It's not time to serve here. Which again is not to say that action is not important. The Good Samaritan just prior to this story proves that. Jesus says, we heard it last week after the Samaritan helps the Jewish man in need, Jesus says, go and do that. Do something. Don't just sit there and think all the right thoughts. Actually put it into practice in your life. Don't just know that you have to love God and love neighbor. Actually love God and love neighbor. Incarnate that belief. This is not teaching that the contemplative life is best and the active life is okay, but the spiritual life, or the contemplative life, is really more spiritual. So let's do that as much as we can. It's not attacking the importance of serving. Serving it matters. And Martha's service here is commendable. She's trying to love her neighbor. But her distracting anxieties are not. This is what Jesus pinpoints, that she's worried and distracted by many things. He doesn't attack her service. He attacks her attitude, her way of coming at things, and how it's causing her to miss out on what matters most, of being in the present moment. And I think this is where the story connects so well with us in our culture, because we are distracted by so many options. We are divided by so many things. So many things vie for our attention. So much so that we really have a hard time sitting still at all, because there's always something that needs our attention. There's always something that needs done or watched or listened to or scrolled through. Something that keeps us from being fully present in the moment that we are in now. Something that keeps us from showing the hospitality of presence that Mary shows. We've all been there, where we're present, we're with other people technically, but our mind is occupied by everything except that person right in front of us. Perhaps you're experiencing this right now, or at least at some point during in worship. I think we all experience this. That we're in church and we're thinking about grocery lists, or lunch later, or activities later, or messages and emails that need to be answered, or tomorrow's to-do list. All things that are good, but they're keeping you from being present now. How easy it is to be physically present in the same room with someone else, but have your mind elsewhere, distracted, pulled apart, fragmented, in no way engaged in the present situation. How hard it is to really give someone else the hospitality of presence, the gift of your attention. That's why it's so easy to identify with Martha. She's the patron saint of our busy society. She's the patron saint of distracted, anxious, obsessive, productive, busy people who value production over listening and reflecting. She's the patron saint of a culture where it's a badge of honor when someone asks you how you're doing to respond, "Oh, I'm so busy. I have so much going on," which we say that and we hope that the other person's going to think, well, you must be so useful. You must be doing such a productive life. Good for you. But maybe this is actually symptomatic of a problem that we think it's a good thing to answer always, "I'm so busy." Maybe that's something we need to question and reevaluate in our culture, especially if it keeps us from being present to what matters more. Because this is a tale of Jesus engaging with two women, it's important that I quote from a feminine perspective. Elizabeth Johnson is a theologian, a female, and she says this: "Many people in our congregations likely identify with Martha. Feeling pulled in different directions, feelings worried and distracted by many things, these seem to be common threads of life in our fast-paced world. We know that worrying does no good and that much of what we worry about is not so important in the larger scheme of things. And yet we cannot seem to quell our anxious thoughts and frantic activity. It is true that much of our busyness and distraction stems from the noblest of intentions." In other words, the motivation behind serving is good. "And yet if all our activities leave us with no time to be still in the Lord's presence and hear God's word, we are likely to end up anxious and troubled. We are likely to end up with a kind of service that is devoid of love and joy and is resentful of others." And isn't that Martha's situation? She resents Mary because Mary is truly engaged with her guest. And she's unkind to both Mary and Jesus because she's full of anxiety. She's troubled. She feels the need to project her anxiety on everyone else in the room so that everybody else can be miserable like her. She has the noblest of intentions. She welcomed Jesus after all. But all the distractions cause her to lose sight of why she invited him in the first place. And that's why Jesus rebukes her, because he loves her. Because he doesn't want her to miss out on this. That's why he offers her these wonderful words that maybe each of us needs to hear from time to time. "Jared, Jared." And maybe that's enough, just someone saying your name. "Jared, Jared, you are so worried and bothered about so many things. Before you destroy yourself with activity full of resentment and bitterness, why not stop, take a break, rest, be still for a moment, allow me to be your Lord. Remember that you are loved before you do anything. That no matter who you are or what you are going through, you are mine. And then once you've reestablished that, now go out and get busy serving others, but now with the right attitude, not with resentment and bitterness, but with the peace that comes from being with Jesus." I think this is what Jesus is trying to communicate to Martha and to all of us. You're worried about all kinds of things. Are you so worried that you've forgotten what matters most, the most important thing? So this is by no means a critique of service. It is a critique of excessive worry and distraction. It's a critique of being fragmented and divided and so pulled apart by things that we lose sight of things that matter more. Henry David Thoreau says this: "It's not enough to be busy, so are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about?" In other words, can we remain present even when we're busy serving? James Lawrence quotes, and this is a longer quote, but I think it's worth quoting in full. He says, "We might be called to serve right now. We might be. Or we might be called to sit at Jesus' feet in prayer. Both of these are important. But the motivation is even more important. Serving others will not be helpful at all if we do it in a distracted way, or if we are resentful about doing or feeling forced to do it. That is not what God wants. God wants us to do all things with love. Serving a dinner with love can be an act of worship. It can be a time of prayer, or it can lead to distraction and anxiety and worry and resentment. It's not what they did, it's the attitude that they did it with. So what matters most then is not whether we are sitting at Jesus' feet or serving Jesus dinner. What matters is why we are doing what we are doing and the attitude that we have while doing it. Are we doing it free from distractions and anxiety and resentment, or are we doing it out of love?" End quote. As I draw this to a close, we don't know how it ends. We don't know how Mary responds to Jesus' kind and gentle rebuke. We don't know because it's left open-ended. Did her distractions and worries get the best of her? I've had those days, you've had those days where we can't get any peace whatsoever. Did Martha and Mary reconcile? Were they able to enjoy a meal with Jesus? Do we get the Hallmark ending with a beautiful moment of presence where they're fully engaged with one another, laughing and enjoying one another's company and loving one another? That's the ending I hope for. Because Jesus' rebuke from the very beginning was a loving rebuke. Martha, Martha. Jesus isn't angry with her. He is trying to liberate her just as he already liberated Mary. He's trying to get her to see the freedom that is available to her so that she can know the same peace that Mary already knows. This is my hope for you as well. This message would be a waste, though, if you leave feeling like this is another thing you have to do, that you have to sit at Jesus' feet on top of everything else. So I want to end with this quote by Judy Kincaid. She says this story is not adding one more thing for you to worry about. That's not what it's about. It's about encouraging you to concentrate your life and your attention on what is truly important. The story is not about judgment. It is about grace. You are being given permission to say no. To say no. If you are going to choose to be devoted to Christ and spend time with him, you are going to have to say no to other things sometimes. Maybe it will be no to keeping your house perfect, or no to staying late at work, or no to heading up that extra project. Maybe it will mean saying no to Sunday soccer practice or travel hockey. You are being given permission to choose the better portion and relax at the feet of the Lord. Good things can distract us from the best things. Good things can distract us from the best things. And being present here now, no matter what we're doing, whether we're serving or listening or worshiping or working or resting or playing, being present in all things, that's what matters most. And that is why sometimes, dear friends, the dishes can wait.